What started as a simple court hearing quickly turned into a tense back and forth between a young driver and the judge. The defendant walked into court determined to withdraw his plea, insisting that the police officer who stopped him had no right to pull him over in the first place. He confidently argued that the officer couldn't have possibly run his license plate because it was covered. According to him, the stop was unfair, the detention was illegal, and the search of his car had absolutely no justification. He even explained that his car had been towed and that he couldn't afford to get it back, making the situation even more frustrating for him. But as the judge began reviewing the facts, the story started to change. Judge Simpson revealed something the defendant seemed to overlook. His driver's license was expired. Not only that, but he was carrying two different forms of identification at the same time: an expired Michigan ID and a canceled driver's license. The judge explained that in Michigan, having both of those together is actually illegal and can immediately raise suspicion for law enforcement. Then the judge addressed the traffic stop itself. The plate cover on the defendant's car made the license plate difficult to read, which is a violation of traffic law. That alone gave the officer probable cause to stop the vehicle. In other words, the officer was doing exactly what the law allows. As the conversation continued, it became clear that the defendant's confusion about his license traced back to a mistake years earlier at the Secretary of State's office. But the judge made one thing very clear: misunderstanding the law doesn't excuse breaking it. In the end, the judge denied the request to withdraw the plea. What the defendant believed was an unfair stop turned out to be a situation created by his own misunderstanding of the rules. And the courtroom lesson was simple. Sometimes the facts tell a very different story than the one we believe.
Motion to withdraw your plea?
Yeah.
Why do you want your plea withdrawn?
Just because the situation was misunderstood. As far as like the insurance and the tags, like I understand that. That's why I paid like the day of the ticket. But the officer was following me and then detained me without any questioning and was searching my car for over like 15 minutes. Then tried to get into the trunk of my car when he asked me.
Okay, that's why you want to withdraw your plea?
I'm trying to get my vehicle back because I can't afford to give $3,000 to get my car back. My car shouldn't have been towed.
Hold on a second. Okay, so your car got impounded.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let me just ask you this. At the time that you were pulled over, you were by yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Yes.
problem is, well, I don't know if it's a problem or not. Your original license that you received was on March 3rd of 2010.
Yes.
Right? So that license in 2010, if you get a 4-year license, so 14, 18, 22, and then it should have been 26, which means, well, it looks to me that the license prior to this one that you got in June, there wasn't one.
So I went to the Secretary of State and they told me that someone up there made an error in 2016.
In 2016?
Yeah. And then I ended up taking the driver's test twice. I don't know why someone up there made an error.
All right. No.
That's what,
In 2016, somebody made an error?
yes, that's what they told me at the Secretary of State. That's why it showed up on his computer that there was 2 licenses, and he said that one was suspended. And
Whoa.
that sense.
Where'd the second license go?
That's what he told me.
That there were 2?
Yes, he after he searched my car, and when I told him, he came back to the squad car. He said, "How do I get in the trunk of your car?" I told him, "You don't have probable cause for that, or a warrant. I don't know why you need that." He went back and kept searching. Then he got in the car, and I just wasn't responding to him because he wasn't listening to me. And then he said, well, you have 2 driver's licenses and 1 suspended, so I'm towing your car.
Okay, so here's what, hang on a second. I don't know anything about the search, and I get that you may be upset about that, but I'm not here to deal with that, right? He said you had 2.
Yes. On top of that, when he stopped me, it wasn't like he was even asking me for any of that. He told me, get out the car or I'm going to arrest you.
Okay, look, young man, if you want to be mad at the officer, you can be mad at the officer and you can do whatever. It doesn't get me anywhere today trying to deal with your motion to withdraw your plea.
Yeah.
Okay? So you can tell me all of that. That's not going to factor into anything I have to deal with. Understood?
Yeah. And this is the second time I've ever even been pulled over. I've never.
Well, again, I don't, that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, and at some point, you're operating off of a Michigan ID. And then when the officer pulls you over, all you have is an expired ID. Likely when they went in, it really isn't 2 licenses that he saw, because I don't see another number attached to.
Yeah, so when he said that, I was like, that doesn't make no sense.
Well, it does, but it's not a license he's looking at. He's looking at what he sees are 2 forms of ID. He's seeing your Michigan ID when he's running it. He's seeing your Michigan ID and he's seeing a license. You can't have both.
Okay.
And so if that's what the officer saw, I can understand his suspicion then, because you can't have 2. Whether somebody made a mistake or not, it's Secretary of State, I don't know. I'm just saying you can't have both. So then after this stop occurs, you go to the Secretary of State. They're going to make you're over 18, so they're going to make you basically start again, because at some point, that's why you took the driving test course, because at some point, your license lapsed for an excessive period of time.
Okay.
And that's going to be the period at which, whenever it was, that you had the Michigan ID.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happened. That's why you become the focal point. Now, it makes sense with what, it may not make sense to you when you're there, and you may think the officer's not telling you something, but I can understand it now, because you have 2 forms of ID. And the only one he finds on you, or that you have, is the expired Michigan ID. But you had said you lost your wallet, or somebody took your wallet, so you don't even have your new Michigan ID on you.
They just gave me a new one now though, but
What?
They just gave me a new one now.
When? In June?
I got it in my pocket.
No, but that's different. Okay. I'm having to deal with this way too much in my life. That's different than what the officer had you with. The expired one, what he had you with was an expired Michigan ID. That's different than having a driver's license. That may be that, I don't know why you're there in 16, but if something happened to your driver's license in 2016, you go to the Secretary of State. What you want is your license back. And when they're telling you somebody made a mistake, I can't say it's happened. Whatever happens, you get a Michigan ID. That cancels your driver's license.
Okay, I understand that.
You following me?
I'm following.
And then as you're just kind of moving along, living your life, doing whatever, at some point, and just looking at it from the Secretary of State side, your license, you just lapsed. It's like you went in and said, I don't want my license, give me a state ID, is how they're going to see it, regardless of what happened when you were down there at the Secretary of State. And then that period in time lasted so long that then after this happens, you go back in, you got to basically start again. Make sense? I mean, that make you happy?
Oh, no, that does. No, I understand now.
And so, and maybe so that you can sort of understand from the officer's perspective, okay, because you're bringing this up, and maybe to chill you out a little bit. The officer, when they run you, I now get two things. You don't have anything on you except an expired one, right? But I now get two things that come back on you. The only thing you can show, I don't want to say it, but I'm trying to make it really clear because I think this is what happened when he told you had two. If I'm the officer, I'm not sure that you ever got a driver's license. Okay, and I'm guessing a little bit, but it makes sense. Because I see two things come up, right? And the numbers are going to be similar, but I see two things come up. And the only thing I've got on you physically is an expired ID, which then leads me to the conclusion that you didn't have a driver's license. But for whatever reason, a driver's license is coming back, but that driver's license is gone. Yeah. Follow me?
Mm-hmm.
Now, at that point, and I'm going to tell you, even if it were me on the road and I stop you and all of that comes back to me, I'm suspicious of you at that point because those things shouldn't be happening. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it would have almost been, and this sounds crazy, but sometimes life's, it would have almost been better if you hadn't had the expired Michigan ID. Right? Because at that point, I could almost say there's got to be a mistake somewhere. But the moment you had the Michigan ID, I think you just have a Michigan ID that you didn't have a driver's license, but somehow or another driver's license showed. Okay? That's why he probably has the suspicion of what the heck's going on.
So,
I mean, I'm not saying it's your fault, but what I'm saying is I don't think it's the officer's fault necessarily either, the raising of the suspicion. Whatever happened, as they're telling you in 2016, mm-hmm. This was just waiting to occur at some point.
Okay.
It was just going to happen. And you probably walked out of there thinking that you had a driver's license when really all you had was a state ID.
Did that, but he did all that after.
Did all what after?
Like, why didn't he run my plate?
No, he knows before he's gonna say anything to you. I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, he didn't run my plate still until after.
Not the plate, the license.
Even that, he didn't look at none of that until like 20 minutes after.
So he does that before he goes over the
What you mean?
Oh yeah, he knows.
He has all the information before he stops.
You know how I know he didn't?
Look, young man, you can sit here and argue with me.
I'm
going to tell you what. Do a ride along. You will see. They know it before they necessarily.
I'm asking you how. Because how he gonna run my plates when I have a cover?
You just want to be mad at the officer.
Listen
to me. You want to be mad at the officer. I would be mad at the officer too if there wasn't a valid reason, which is the only reason I went through all of this stuff. And what I'm trying to tell you is you need to just chill about it. It doesn't matter. You can sit here all day and night long and try to blame the officer for it. Because the first question I asked you is I said, were you alone? And the reason I asked you if you were alone is because the moment you don't have a license, he can't leave that vehicle. That's why your vehicle's impounded. Because that's the first thing you came to me and said. So if you want to argue, you can go argue elsewhere. I'm here to just deal with your motion.
I'm not mad or frustrated. I'm saying he couldn't have ran my understanding. When I pulled off on Carpenter, he was coming from Textile.
And you're saying your plate isn't exposed on your vehicle?
My plate, it's the new plates that you can order. So it can be exposed when I allow it to be. I just picked the car up. The car has been in the shop for months. I haven't driven my car all year. When I pulled off on Textile, he just can't, he was following me.
Okay. He's just a bad officer. You know what? Go ahead and sue him. Have your day in court.
That's what I'll do.
You go ahead and do it, but don't do it here because I don't have any more time to listen to you. I'm trying to explain it to you, but you want to be hard-headed and not do it. You want to say, how does he know? I'm telling you, before they walk up to that vehicle, they know who you are. Just as simple as that. You may not like it. Everybody else may not like it. That's too bad. What's the basis for your motion?
I appreciate that. I'll just sue him.
It's what?
I'm gonna just sue him. It's fine.
You're not getting anywhere. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You're being hard-headed because I can tell you, why do you think I just went through all of it? The reason I went through all of that is I can tell you exactly what happened. You didn't have a driver's license because I can tell from your record, you didn't get a driver's license issued to you until June of this year.
Okay.
Motion denied.
A routine courtroom hearing turns into a surprisingly tense exchange when a young driver decides he wants to withdraw the plea he previously entered in his case. Standing before the judge, he appears confident that the entire situation started because a police officer unfairly targeted him during a traffic stop. From his point of view, the officer had no legitimate reason to pull him over, and everything that happened after that moment was wrong. The young man begins explaining his side of the story. He insists the officer could not have possibly run his license plate before stopping him. According to him, the license plate on his car had a cover on it, which made it difficult to read. Because of that, he argues that the officer had no way of identifying his vehicle before the stop. In his mind, that proves the officer acted without proper cause. He continues explaining that after he was pulled over, things only got worse. He claims he was detained, questioned, and that officers searched his vehicle without any valid reason. The entire experience, he says, felt unfair and unnecessary. He clearly believes he was treated like a criminal for something that should never have happened in the first place. The frustration in his voice grows as he talks about what happened after the stop. His car was eventually towed, leaving him without transportation. On top of that, retrieving the vehicle would cost money he says he simply doesn't have. For him, the consequences of that traffic stop have become a financial and personal burden. But as the judge listens carefully, the conversation begins to shift. Judge Simpson starts asking questions and reviewing the facts surrounding the traffic stop. At first, the defendant seems confident in his explanation. However, the judge quickly brings up an important detail that changes the entire picture. The judge explains that the defendant's driver's license had already expired. That alone raises concerns. Operating a vehicle with an expired license is a violation of the law, and it immediately complicates the situation the defendant is trying to challenge. But the issue doesn't stop there. Judge Simpson reveals that the defendant was also carrying two different forms of identification at the same time. One of them was an expired Michigan State ID card. The other was a canceled driver's license. According to Michigan law, having both forms of identification simultaneously can actually be illegal. The judge explains why. When someone holds both a state ID card and a driver's license at the same time, it creates confusion about the person's legal status to drive. State IDs are generally issued to individuals who do not possess a valid driver's license. So when law enforcement officers encounter someone with both, it can raise immediate suspicion. The defendant appears confused by this explanation. He insists that he never intended to break the law and that he didn't even realize there was a problem with his identification. Judge Simpson continues calmly, explaining that the officer's actions during the stop were not unusual. In fact, the officer was performing standard law enforcement duties. Then the judge returns to the issue of the license plate cover. The defendant believed that the plate cover somehow protected him from being stopped because he assumed the officer wouldn't be able to read the plate number. But the judge clarifies something very important. A license plate cover that obscures or makes the plate difficult to read is itself a violation of traffic law. That means the moment an officer notices a plate that cannot be clearly read, they have legal justification to stop the vehicle. In legal terms, this is known as probable cause. It gives the officer the authority to initiate a traffic stop and investigate further. In other words, the very thing the defendant thought proved the officer acted unfairly actually provided the officer with a legitimate reason to pull him over. As the hearing continues, another detail emerges that explains the confusion surrounding the defendant's license. Several years earlier, back in 2016, there had apparently been a mistake involving paperwork at the Secretary of State's office. Because of that error, the defendant believed his license situation had been resolved properly. However, the reality was that his driving privileges eventually lapsed. The judge explains that while the situation may have been confusing, drivers are still responsible for ensuring their license remains valid. Simply assuming everything is fine does not change the legal requirements. The defendant appears increasingly frustrated as he listens to the judge explain the legal details. From his perspective, the system failed him years ago, and he's now facing consequences because of something he didn't fully understand. But Judge Simpson emphasizes an important principle that applies in courts across the country. Not knowing the law does not excuse someone from following it. This concept, often summarized as ignorance of the law is not a defense, exists to ensure that legal standards apply equally to everyone. If simply claiming ignorance were enough to avoid responsibility, the legal system would quickly become impossible to enforce. The judge continues reviewing the situation piece by piece. The plate cover justified the traffic stop. The expired license created additional legal issues. The presence of both forms of identification raised further questions for law enforcement officers. Taken together, the officers' actions during the traffic stop were consistent with what the law allows. The defendant had come to court hoping the judge would allow him to withdraw his previous plea. He believed that if the court recognized the stop as invalid, the entire case might fall apart. But as the facts become clearer, that hope begins to fade. Judge Simpson explains that the court cannot ignore the evidence or the legal standards that apply to the situation. While the defendant may genuinely feel that he was treated unfairly, the law tells a different story. Finally, after reviewing everything, the judge reaches a decision. The motion to withdraw the plea is denied. The defendant's arguments, while passionate, do not change the legal facts surrounding the traffic stop or the violations involved. The courtroom grows quiet as the decision sinks in. What began as a confident challenge to law enforcement ended with a hard lesson about responsibility, legal rules, and the importance of understanding how the law actually works. For the defendant, the experience serves as a reminder that small details, like an expired license or a license plate cover, can quickly lead to bigger legal problems. And for anyone watching the hearing unfold, the message becomes clear. Sometimes the situation we believe is unfair turns out to be the result of misunderstandings, overlooked rules, or assumptions that don't hold up once the facts are examined closely. In the end, the case highlights how easily a routine traffic stop can escalate into a complicated legal situation. What might seem like a minor issue on the road can quickly bring someone face to face with the legal system. And when that happens, the facts, the law, and the judge's interpretation of both ultimately determine the outcome.